Sounds good.
Let's start about how's your stay in Manila. I bet this is your first time in Manila. How's the atmosphere? How's how's your stay, initial stay?
It's been great. This is actually my first time in Asia, anywhere in Asia. So I was excited to come and just soak everything in. The food is great. I love the food.
Have you tried anything Filipino?
um, well, I don't know. I went to the buffet here, the lechon. Yeah, it reminded me. It's very similar to the Cuban lechon that we eat, also. So it was real good.
Let's talk about Manila. Manila is very historical in a sense. Like the rubber match between Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier happened here at Trilla in Manila. Last year we have a super fight, a featherweight super fight between Uriah Faber
And Frankie
and
Edgar.
Frankie Edgar. Now let's talk about Manila. What was the initial reaction when Manila, headlining specifically Manila, was offered to you by the UFC?
Well, the first thing that did pop into my head was, the thrill in Manila with Muhammad Ali. So it was a historic fight in all of sports, and I'd like to put on another one in October with BJ Penn. He's a legend in the sport, and I'm really excited to get the opportunity to fight him here.
Yeah, of course. Manila was offered to you, but when you heard that you're going to face a legend like BJ Penn, what was the reaction in a number 4 ranked featherweight like you?
At first on paper, the fight doesn't really help me that much. Even with a good win, because BJ, this is I don't know his fight with Frank Yeager. I'm not sure if it was at 145 or 155. I don't remember, but he's not ranked in the featherweight division, so it's not going to move me up. It's not going to move me down. But personally, for me, it's a great fight because this is a guy that I practically grew up watching in the sport, and he's already a Hall of Famer. So there's not many people that can say that they've competed against a Hall of Famer. So for me, it was kind of a no-brainer to take this fight.
Obviously, BJ is perhaps the biggest name in the 21 fights that 21 opponents that you faced prior to this. Do you think if you're going to put it like Manila headlining against BJ Penn, it sounds like a perfect recipe. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. I got into this sport because I want to create these big memories that I could share with my kids and grandkids as I get older. So this is going to be a huge one. I get to tell them about the time that I flew out to Asia, to the Philippines, and got to take on a 2-division world champion who was in the Hall of Fame, and I'll tell them how I beat that person.
Do you think a win against BJ will put you on the line again, or give you a good momentum of having another shot on the belt?
I think it'll get me back on track. I don't think that I'll get a title shot with a win over BJ. I think I'll have to put together another 2 more wins, at least. But it'll get me back on the winning track and get me refocused on the title shot.
It has been cliche or overused in the sense that it always been reiterated by many that BJ has nothing more to prove in the sport. I can't really put you in that to say that you can say that it's really hard to resist coming back. But let me ask you, do BJ Penn has something to prove in this fight, or something to prove to himself or in this sport?
I think maybe to himself. I think to the fans, he's already done enough. He's been a world champion at welterweight. He's been a world champion at lightweight. He's in the Hall of Fame already. He's done tremendous things for this sport, especially for lightweights. And I don't know. I think one of the hardest things about being a professional athlete, especially being a professional fighter, is to finally give in to Father Time. I think that's something that none of us ever want to do. We always want to stay in the light. This is almost like a drug. You get addicted to it. You get addicted to the fights, to the exposure, to being out in that arena with a crowd cheering you on. So to walk away from it is probably the hardest thing that any of us fighters will have to do. And I think that's something that BJ's struggling with right now.
Changing weight class is not, you're no stranger to that, because your first 11 fights were lightweight.
Yeah.
Yeah, you started your career as a lightweight. You've been a featherweight since your UFC debut.
Hmm.
Do you think BJ has a rightful place in featherweight? Because he was highly criticized when he fought Frankie Edgar in 2014.
Yeah, we'll see. You know, personally, I don't think it's a good decision for him to drop all the way down to featherweight. You know, he was a very good fighter at welterweight and at lightweight. And you know, from his last performance against Frankie Edgar, it looked like the weight cut made him suffer a little bit. So we'll just have to see what happens in October.
My good friend Robert mentioned about where will it put you after if you're going to pick up the win. Who do you think give us at least 3 opponents that will catapult you? Because you kept on mentioning on interviews that you want to go back to title contention, even prior to the Max Holloway fight.
Hmm. I think the main name that'll catapult me to a title fight right now would probably be Frankie Edgar. He's the only one ranked above me right now in the featherweight division that I haven't fought. So, you know, definitely Frankie. Maybe a rematch with Max would also catapult me, depending on how he does. He might be offered the next title shot, I think, so he deserves it. I mean, anybody ranked above me in that featherweight division. So 3 names would probably be, you know, Chad Mendes, Frankie Edgar, and Max Holloway.
Yeah, speaking of Chad, because Chad is out of action
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's going to be Frankie Edgar.
Frankie Edgar, Max Holloway, and Jose Aldo.
And as an MMA fighter, who can you say was your biggest inspiration or inspired you to be in this kind of sport?
There are a lot. I started watching UFC from, you know, the very beginning practically. I think the first event I saw was UFC 3 or 4, somewhere around there. But I was a huge fan of all those old school wrestlers that fought in the UFC, like Dan Severn, Don Fry. Vitor Belfort was somebody else when he first came out that inspired me a lot. Obviously, being a fan of Royce Gracie, you know, coming from the family that started the sport, Tito Ortiz, Randy Couture, and, you know, of course, Chuck Liddell was another person that I was a big fan of.
Any advice that you can give to, actually right now here in Asia, or specifically here in the Philippines, MMA is growing up rapidly, technically. So any advice that you can give to those young kids who are planning to go into the sport, or any advice that you can give them to be a successful MMA fighter as you?
Yeah, I would say to take it slow and really learn each style as best as you can before turning pro. You know, I've seen a lot of younger people back in the States who turn pro a little too quickly before they're ready. And, you know, their record suffers because of that. And then once you have this record with all these losses on it, it's kind of hard to break into a bigger show. So the best advice I can give anybody is education first. You know, that's I didn't start fighting until I after I graduated college because you need something to fall back on. You know, this fighting game doesn't last forever. So you definitely need an education before you start fighting, and take your time with it.
Does it really have a day and night difference when you compare talent between the talent of the East and the West?
I'm not sure. You know, this is my first time here in the East, so we'll see how it goes. I think the only difference that there is that in you know, back where I'm from in the United States, MMA has been around longer. We've been exposed to it more. So I think we've had more time to train and you know, prepare our fighters to fight in the sport. And MMA is just now growing globally around the world. So there are people that are just being introduced to it that are kind of behind a little bit in the training. So I think once everybody catches up, it'll be an even playing field, and we'll see great things in the sport.
Now let's talk about the featherweight division landscape. It's very interesting. You got an interim champion, and your featherweight kingpin is fighting at a welterweight against Nate Diaz. So can you break us down about the fight, and do you think that it will affect Conor McGregor as a champion if he loses once again to Nate Diaz?
You know, Conor McGregor is very smart. He's choosing these fights so that he has things to fall back on. You know, he's getting these big money fights with other names outside of the division, and if he loses, he's still the champ at featherweight. So a loss over Nate Diaz, I don't think would affect him as the featherweight champion at all. You know, he still has that to fall back on. As far as the fight itself, you know, I'm hoping Nate Diaz does the same thing and kicks McGregor's butt. But we'll see what happens. You know, McGregor's a good fighter.
Ability as a fighter, he really pushes that to the limit that he promotes himself very much.
Yeah, he's done that well. I don't agree with his tactics, but you know, it's been working for him.
Yeah, I've noticed before we end this interview, you notice that there's an alter ego for Ricardo Lamas, and his name is the Delirious.
The Delirious one.
McGillicuddy.
Yeah, well, that was.
How did you make
That was back when I was trying to pick a fight with the guy, and he was talking a lot of trash about myself and the other fighters in the division. So I just wanted to give him a taste of his own medicine and try to lure him into a fight.
Like a sample of that.
It's on YouTube if you want to see it.
Yeah. Can you invite every Filipino fight fans to the event on October 15th?
Yes, please go out and get your tickets now, and I'll see you guys October 15th at the Asia Arena, Mall of Asia Arena, and I'll put on a good show for you guys, I promise.